AI pipeline. And so you can see right from the top that they're very different in approach. I'll dive first into grants 8 and 9, which are Pathways and the Bends. And Pathways is written by Felipe Vargas. All of these directors who do end up winning these grants at ETC are well established in their own ways. Felipe just had a feature film release last week called Rosario, which is a Spanish language horror film. And he's already writing Bob the Builder. He's well accomplished. He's got 4 contracts with 4 studios. So, but he was excited about this opportunity because he does see that there's something coming around the bend, and he wants to be ahead of that curve. And what we're doing essentially is working with the filmmakers, telling them what the technology can give them, and they remain very flexible about how they write their script so that it works within the acceptable range of what the technology is mature to do at that time. And we're learning it as we go. So we run a lot of tests in R&D before we go into the final production. So one of the things that we've been doing is testing out all the tools. So between all of our teams, we've tested over, I'd say, a few hundred AI tools and approaches, and then narrowed down on which are the ones that solve unique problems in each of these films. And then we lined them up as a pipeline that works for each siloed team that works within the pipeline. So in this one, the goal was to have a hybrid approach, because the performers, the central characters, are children, and we wanted to make sure that we were true to the innocence that they bring to their performance, the richness that they bring to it. So we're going to capture the performance of these child actors, especially using iPhones, and then work with artists to then retain that to the end. And that was a big challenge. We thought we could run it through various AI pipelines, but we noticed that almost every AI is biased to take every pixel that we feed it and hallucinate around it and create something different each time. There's never a consistent output. And so we're working right now with Foundry and using Nuke to build a Comfy UI to Nuke round trip. And the idea over there is that now we can put anchor weights in a way, so we can anchor layers that we do not want the AI to touch in any way. And we're only replacing layers or portions that need something to be replaced. And the other thing that we're building is, of course, is a lot of unique Comfy UI pipelines. So within the Comfy UI pipeline, we're making sure that we're able to integrate APIs from some of the major AI players. And this project on Pathways, we're collaborating with AWS and working with Topaz. We'll also be doing something with Dolby on this, and a couple of other things along the way. So when we explore these blue sky opportunities at EDC, we look at 2 things. We look at scale, we look at adoption, and we think of, let's look at the most optimal way to approach these tools that can be basically adopted by people at an independent level. But at the same time, let's look at how far it can go so that it can be scaled at the level of studios and other enterprise folks who are stakeholders at ETC. So let's look at one of the things that we've done here with the Comfy UI pipeline. Supposed to be video files, but they're not auto-playing here. So essentially what this is we worked with JetSet, which is an iPhone app created by a company called Lightcraft. And what it does is real-time compositing in a way. So we feed it an Unreal Engine 3D world, and it's able to play that 3D world and place the human actor into it in real time. So we're doing 2 things with this now. For one, we're doing simulcam for the director to get a sense of the shot in real time, preview on the iPhone. The other thing is basically it spits out a bunch of data for us. It's able to spit out a combined composite frame that we're able to use as guiding data for AI to do scene transfer or anything else. We're able to use a clean background plate if we want to run that. And it's also giving us all the camera tracking data that we can use while we're doing this Gen AI scene transfer. The pipeline that we figured out that works best for us is to use the human actor's performance that was captured on the iPhone, clean the green screen out in Nuke using traditional pipelines, because green screen cleaning and alpha matte creation has been around for many years, and we've got great tools already very mature in that pipeline, so we use that. What we used from Jet Set is the clean background plate that it outputted. We just use the first frame of that background plate and then turn it to what our production designer wants it to look like. And that's the process where we use Comfy UI workflows, where we've trained a lot of custom LoRa's. And what are LoRa's? LoRa's are essentially custom data sets that we use to train specific aspects within a certain frame. So in this case, we could say we want the walls to always be made with these kind of stones, or we want the roof to be made, so if there's thatched roof, but we need straw over there, we'd basically say this is the kind of straw we need over there. So we'll just basically assign tokens to them or trigger words to them, and as we basically prompt it, it knows to basically go back to that version of what we want it to look. And that's how we basically assemble the whole frame to look a certain way. So once we have that first frame, we run it through the runway first frame, and that essentially gives us our finished composite in a way that we, again, are baking in Nuke so that we don't have any of the hallucinations coming that distort the actor. There may be other elements that we built into it, like atmospheric or volumetric elements, whether it's fog or other aspects that, again, are very unpredictable to be spitting out from an AI tool. So we do that, again, in a very controlled manner in Nuke. And once we have this composite, we run it through Project Starlight from Topaz to upscale it. And what we notice with Topaz essentially is that it's able to not only upscale the pixel, it's able to maintain temporal consistency, as well as it does a good job of blending the composite elements. So it stitches the edges of all the different elements that we brought into the pipeline from different disparate ways, whether it's the iPhone capture of the actor's performance, whether it's the runway background plate that was composited, any volumetric aspects that we put on top of it. So all of those things are blend pretty consistently with Topaz. A couple other things that we will do on Pathways is also we're working with PhotoCam, where we'll basically transfer the final film onto celluloid and then scan it back so that we have consistent grain and consistent exposure across the entire film. Now that's something that most independent filmmakers may not care much about, but studios would, or certain legacy filmmakers would. So that's why we're even going that distance. The other project is The Bends. And this is an end-to-end AI animated film, but the end product has to look like live action. But it's the life of a fish, it's the life of a Bob Sculpin. People only have been exposed to this creature in its most disgusting and deformed form when it's depressurized as it surfaces, and it turns into this bulbous creature with no particular shape. But in its natural habitat, it looks like a healthy, natural fish. And our writer-director, Tiffany Lin, has written a fable around this in the likes of Hans Christian Andersen, whether it's Little Mermaid or Ugly Duckling. There's a story and a moral hidden in here. She writes an allegory over here around the concept of ambition. This fish lives a very slow-moving, boring life, and then it gets exposed to something very exciting from the surface, a very shiny lure that catches its attention, and it gives them hope that maybe there's something out there that's really rich and worth pursuing. And so as it makes its journey to the top, of course, it loses itself. It loses its form, it loses its identity, it loses its comfort. And it's really a journey about that. There are certain ambitions that could completely make us lose who we are. So that's essentially the moral of it. But it's written very, very well, and the writer-director is also an animator, so it's interesting how she has approached it. She has sketched every frame of this film, and created an animatic, and we're using that animatic to drive the frame creation. So the guidance data is coming from her. And the other thing that we're exploring in both these projects, or all three projects, is essentially a big concern that studios companies have. You spend a lot of effort, there's a big investment to be made in all projects that you do. Can you actually commercialize it? Is there a possibility that the product is copyrightable? Can we defend it? Can we market it? Can we make money on it? And with AI, of course, that's a huge concern because there's a lot of debate around how have these LLMs or video models or image models been trained? Where do they scrape their data from? We don't know. So two things we're doing to essentially protect the creators is to come up with a workflow that does two things. One, we're air gapping everything. What does air gapping mean? Air gapping means that we do the early exploration on some of these models, whether it's Midjourney, introducing their human creative intent in one way or another. In Pathways, we're doing that by capturing human performance on an iPhone and then directing every element within it. So we've got a production designer, we've got a costume designer, we've got
No, the guy that writes the and we're just standing.
and we're using that Bible essentially to guide the AI to follow their instructions to the T. And we're also creating a lot of provenance capturing tools. So we're working with companies like Perpetual Intelligence and a few others to build models that are essentially capturing all of the human-to-human and human-to-AI interactions, and then looking at the final product at every stage and any form of AI workflow, I think being able to capture provenance is becoming very necessary. So this is the overview of the BINS workflow, and here again, the human creative intent comes from the director. Because she's an animator, she's literally defining every keyframe and then the structure of the animation and the structure of the moments. So at every point we have a checkpoint that goes back and forth for approvals and only then proceeds to the next step. And part of this is also creating the fish in its various stages of deformation. So how do you do that? There's very little resource out there in terms of actual footage that any of these AI models could have scraped. So if you put in a Bob Sculpin into, we're using Google View exclusively for this project because Google's a partner on this one, Amazon's the partner on the other one, but you wouldn't get that Bob Sculpin, and you wouldn't get the Bob Sculpin in the in-between stages or any of that stuff. So we reached out to Schmidt Ocean Institute and a number of other marine institutes around the world who have observation decks at 1,000 meters and below and have captured footage of this creature in its natural habitat. And they've all been very compliant and very helpful because we're also a research institute. This is not a commercial project. And so they're providing us their database of all these images. But again, the legal departments with our institute and their institute would have trouble with us using that footage or imagery directly to train AI in any way, because you never know. The AI concept is very similar to GMOs. Once it's out of the can, it's out there. It's going to cross-pollinate, it's going to get everywhere. So we've got to contain it. So we have an architecture to figure out how to basically create those closed-door opportunities to train models that do not pollute, the so-called public cloud models in any way. And what we're doing in this case, again, this is part of the air gapping principle. We have 3D artists who are looking at the imagery that we receive, and they're 3D modeling the fish in all of its different stages, and then we create a number of images out of it in disparate lighting conditions. So with LoRa training models, you want to have disparate images, but what that means is disparate camera angles, disparate focal lengths, disparate lighting conditions, and the more disparity there is in the image library, the better the LoRa would respond. And so that's what we do, is that our artists essentially create that, and so our trained model is what goes into the public cloud if it ever leaks out. So it doesn't touch the original content that was given to us. So these are the kind of things that we're building into the system. This is, of course, something that's coming up because of inquiry with members of our brain trust and figuring out what's the ethical way to approach it. We've got legal counsels working with us on this. We've got technologists working with us on this, and we've got artists working on this, and IP holders. So these are some questions that are being answered. And the big challenge over here is also, with AI becoming so popular in the consumer space, where everybody now has the approach of just typing in a prompt and getting an output, what is that AI going to do in terms of flooding the airwaves with so much content and taking away what is a very zero-sum commodity, which is essentially people's attention and people's money for that, for what they pay to give their attention to in the entertainment space. How do Hollywood studios make a $100 million movie, spend another $100 million? This is an active conversation, and I think everybody